In January 2020, a father in Venezuela uploaded a video to the internet. In the video, a shocking image of a young girl appears. The girl's name is Narieli Kacharko Guillen. At the time, she was 15 years old. One day, Narieli suddenly became unable to swallow food at all and vomited everything except water. Because she could not eat, her body began to waste away rapidly, and she suffered from severe malnutrition. But what was even stranger was that after Narieli became ill, her personality changed by 180 degrees. She had always been a gentle and quiet child, but suddenly she began to lash out at her family and even became violent. According to her family, despite her rapidly weakening body, she displayed superhuman strength. The family called doctors to their home and underwent multiple examinations. However, no doctor was able to determine an exact diagnosis or find the cause. Her condition worsened day by day, yet no one knew why. Eventually, the family turned away from medicine and tried religious and spiritual methods of treatment. When they went to a priest to ask for help, what the priest said was shocking. He claimed the child was cursed, that someone had cast magic on her, and that she was possessed by an evil spirit. Believing his words and desperate to grasp at any hope, the family began a purification ritual at home. The ritual continued day and night for 9 days. On the 9th day, Narieli died during the purification ritual. She passed away without an exact diagnosis or cause of death ever being identified. At that time, the family recalled a particular incident. The day before Narieli first became ill, a neighboring woman named Stephanie, who had been close to the family like an older sister, had placed a strange bracelet on Narieli's wrist. When her mother saw it, she immediately felt something ominous, cut the bracelet, and threw it into the trash. After that day, Narieli began to get sick. What on earth happened to Narieli? Welcome to Bitter Clues. My name is Jennifer, narrating today's story. Let's dive right in. This case caused a major shock in Venezuela, but it has been extremely difficult to investigate due to the lack of official records. Despite that, I felt it was important to share this story with you. I tried to investigate the case in as much detail as possible, combining the family's testimony with various rumors and conspiracy theories. Narieli was born in 2005 in La Guaira, a port city in Venezuela. She was the younger of 2 sisters, born to her father Jose and her mother Andre. This family was a very devout Roman Catholic household that attended church and worship services every week. Of course, just because someone is religious does not mean they never drink or live a perfectly pious life. Unlike her parents, Narieli had been full of energy since her teenage years. She loved parties and was happiest when spending time with her friends. Her parents did worry about this side of her, but they still trusted their daughter and allowed her a certain amount of freedom. Narieli was extremely outgoing and friendly, and she quickly became close with new people. In 2009, a woman named Stephanie, who had just turned 20 years old, moved into the house next door. Because the houses were so close, they naturally ran into each other often. They greeted one another, exchanged a few words, and soon realized they got along very well. In a short period of time, Stephanie and Narieli became close, and before long, they were best friends who met almost every single day. Stephanie had originally lived in another area, but due to personal circumstances, she moved to the La Guaira area where Narieli lived for just 1 month. It was during that time that she met Narieli. Narieli truly thought of Stephanie like a real older sister. Since there was an age gap between them, Stephanie often taught Narieli things and shared many stories with her. Because of this, Narieli admired Stephanie as an adult, thinking she was impressive and had many things worth learning from. She began to see Stephanie as a kind of mentor. Unlike the open and energetic Narieli, her parents were conservative in many aspects of life. When they saw the two of them together every day, they initially found it strange, wondering why an adult who was 5 years older was spending so much time with a teenager. They even advised Narieli to spend time with friends her own age rather than an older woman. Hearing her parents' concerns, Narieli thought to herself that Stephanie was truly a good person and that her parents simply did not understand. She decided she should properly introduce Stephanie to them so they would know what kind of person she really was. Narieli repeatedly told her mother how wonderful Stephanie was, saying that spending time together was fun and that there was so much to learn from her. As time passed, her parents gradually opened their hearts to Stephanie, and eventually they came to genuinely trust and like her. Seeing that she treated their daughter like a real younger sister, took her everywhere, and truly enjoyed being with her, it was only natural that they grew fond of her. It felt as if they had gained another reliable older sister in the family. Whenever Narieli had worries, she confided in Stephanie before even telling her parents. Each time, Stephanie listened to all of her concerns like a guide in life, thinking carefully about what Narieli should do. Narieli was deeply grateful for Stephanie's presence and truly cherished her. However, Stephanie had planned to stay in the area for only 1 month. When her 1-month rental contract ended, she moved away again. Narieli and her entire family felt deeply saddened by the move. Stephanie and Narieli promised each other that even after the move, they would continue their relationship just as before. Because the two had grown so close, the increased distance did not become a problem. Even after Stephanie moved away, they continued to see each other almost every day. Since the distance was greater, they would take turns staying overnight. One day, Narieli would sleep at Stephanie's place, and another day, Stephanie would stay at Narieli's home. They remained just as close as ever. Stephanie had even reached the point where she called Narieli's parents Mom and Dad, truly becoming like a member of the family. In December 2019, Stephanie visited Narieli again. That day, the two planned to go to the beach together. Since Narieli was still a teenager, she asked her parents if it was okay for her to go to the beach with Stephanie that day. Her parents gladly gave permission, but told her she had to return home before it got too dark. At that point, if Narieli said she was with Stephanie, her parents allowed almost anything. That was how completely they trusted Stephanie. That afternoon, Narieli and Stephanie spent several hours at the beach talking and passing the time. They ate snacks, played in the sand, and dipped their feet in the seawater as they enjoyed themselves. However, that day was a little different from usual. At the beach, the two practiced something resembling a kind of witchcraft ritual. The reason was that the two followed different religions. Narieli was a devout Catholic, but Stephanie believed in a completely different faith. Because Narieli saw Stephanie as a mentor, she naturally trusted and followed whatever Stephanie suggested. To explain the religion Stephanie believed in, it was called Santería. I had never heard of this religion before researching this case, and it is almost unknown in our country. Santería, in Spanish, roughly means faith in saints. In reality, however, Catholic saints such as Saint Anthony and the Virgin Mary are considered disguised deities within this religion. Santería originated among African slaves who were brought to Latin American regions such as Cuba, Brazil, the Dominican Republic, and Panama, and it developed as a belief system among them. In Spanish colonial Cuba, religions other than Catholicism were prohibited, so enslaved people were unable to openly worship African gods. As a result, this religion was formed. In other words, Santería is not simply the worship of saints. It is a highly complex religion that blends African Yoruba beliefs, Catholicism, and indigenous spiritual traditions. Many of Santeria's rituals, initiations, and prophetic practices are controversial. They are completely different from typical religious ceremonies and include elements such as magic, black magic, and animal sacrifice. Because of this, it is often viewed less as a religion and more as a cult or pseudo-religious practice. People called Stephanie a bruja. The word means witch, and in South America it is used to refer to people who believe in religions like Santería, involving magic, spirit mediums, and folk practices. The term is not always used negatively. A white bruja refers to a woman who heals illnesses, a kind of folk healer, while a black bruja refers to a woman who casts curses and practices black magic. It is somewhat similar to how shamans or spiritual practitioners are viewed in our country. The two of them had tried small rituals before when they met in the past. If Narieli's parents had known about this, they would have been furious. However, Narieli did not genuinely believe in the Santería religion. She simply went along with it because her older sister figure suggested it, and it seemed cool and interesting to her. On this particular day, Stephanie wanted to properly perform a ritual, so she explained the basic methods and theories and then put them into practice. The ritual they performed was meant to ask spiritual beings to protect them from evil energy. The two recited prayers and carried out the ritual, and when it ended, Stephanie took a bracelet out of her bag and placed it on Narieli's wrist. Stephanie told her that as long as she wore it, she would be safe, and that the spirits would protect her. After that, the two decided to go home. Normally, when it got late like this, Stephanie would stay overnight at Narieli's house and return home the next day. But that night was different. Stephanie dropped Narieli off and told her parents that she would just go straight home that night and come back later. Narieli's parents suggested that she stay over since it was already late, but Stephanie said she would come back another time and left. After Stephanie left, that night Narieli's mother noticed the bracelet on her daughter's wrist. The moment she saw it, she realized it did not seem like an ordinary bracelet. It looked like a symbol of religious magic. The mother immediately grabbed Narieli's wrist and shouted, asking what it was. Narieli replied that it was just a bracelet and said that Stephanie told her it would protect her from bad things. However, the bracelet was not a protective charm. It was a cursed bracelet. The mother tore it off and threw it straight into the trash. She felt uneasy and deeply unsettled. She then told Narieli never to accept any gifts from Stephanie again. She felt a sense of betrayal from Stephanie. Because Narieli's parents were devout Catholics, they instinctively distrusted and avoided occult beliefs like Santería. The fact that Stephanie had been taking Narieli around, exposing her to another religion, and even placing a curse on her made them extremely upset. That night, Narieli began to feel that her body was not moving properly and that something was wrong. The next day was December 24th, 2019. It was Christmas Eve. Narieli, still a teenager, had been eagerly waiting for this day. School was off and her whole family was at home. Christmas is a major event, a special day of the year. However, that morning, as soon as Narieli woke up, she felt that something was wrong with her body. It felt as though she could not move properly, and she was unable to swallow food. She told her mother that she felt very unwell and could not eat at all. At first, the family thought it was something minor, like a stomach infection or a bad cold. They assumed she might be sick from being exposed to too much sea wind the day before, and decided she should rest at home for a few days. Narieli stayed in bed, not just that day, but for several days afterward. Because she could not eat, she lost weight to a dangerous degree. Eventually, she could not even get out of bed and move around on her own. She struggled just to support her own body. On New Year's Day in 2020, Nadieli tried to force herself to sit up, but she became dizzy and collapsed, losing consciousness. At that point, her family realized this was not a simple cold and believed something serious was wrong. They took Nadieli to the hospital. However, at the time, Venezuela was facing a severe shortage of medical facilities and doctors. As a result, they were unable to see a physician for her. I will explain this situation in more detail later. The hospital was filled with critically ill patients, all waiting to be seen by doctors. After Nadieli regained consciousness, she seemed to feel better and said she wanted to go home. Because of that, the family decided to return home that day. After she regained consciousness, something about Nadieli was clearly strange. Her personality changed by 180 degrees. She had previously been weak and exhausted, but suddenly she became aggressive and completely uncontrollable. For 2 days, her mother stayed by her side and was repeatedly struck, leaving her with many bruises. What was astonishing was that despite being so emaciated, almost as if only bones remained, Nadieli had incredible strength. From that point on, Nadieli stopped speaking altogether. Her personality had changed, and even her outward appearance seemed completely different from the Nadieli she had been before. On January 2nd, 2020, 2 doctors finally came directly to the house to examine her. In order to determine what illness she might have, they conducted various tests, including blood tests and blood pressure checks. Based on her condition, all her test results should have been severely abnormal. Yet, strangely, there was almost nothing wrong. Most of the test results came back normal. The only abnormal finding was a low neutrophil count, a type of white blood cell. Neutrophils are the first line of defense in the immune system, and a low level means her immune system was extremely weak, and she was highly vulnerable to infection. Even so, the doctors could not explain why she was unable to eat to the point of severe malnutrition, why her body was weakening, why she could not speak, or why she was in such pain. Physically and mentally, Nadieli was changing in drastic ways, yet no one could identify the cause. Her family was terrified and desperate, afraid that they might lose her. The biggest problem was that Nadieli could not eat anything and was wasting away at an alarming rate. The doctors advised the family to keep trying to feed her, suggesting that they grind food and give her liquid meals instead. However, Nadieli vomited even those immediately. 2 weeks had passed since Nadieli first became ill. Her father, Jose, was desperate. He wanted to identify the illness and find a way to treat her no matter what. So he began recording videos of his daughter. These videos were meant to show Nadieli's condition. In the footage, Nadieli is sitting on the bed, unable to properly support her body, suffering from extremely severe malnutrition. The video spread widely, and after watching it, a priest said this. He claimed that the child was a victim of magic and had become possessed by an evil spirit. This was something the parents had desperately wanted to deny. It was terrifying. The priest told them that the curse placed on their daughter needed to be purified as soon as possible. At that point, since medicine had failed to cure Nadieli, the family decided to pursue spiritual healing. At first, they took Nadieli to the church where that priest was. There, she underwent a form of spiritual purification. It was not like the dramatic exorcism seen in movies. It involved prayer and sprinkling holy water, nothing more. Of course, Nadieli did not improve at all. As the video Jose uploaded became an issue, many people began sending him messages and advice. These people insisted that Nadieli was truly possessed by an evil spirit. They said that in cases like this, people are often healed at spiritual healing centers. They recommended a place called the Maria Leonza Worship Center. Maria Leonza is said to be one of Venezuela's representative spiritual religions. According to research, about 20% of Venezuela's population deifies and believes in her. One characteristic of this belief system is that it is centered on rituals. There are practices similar to spirit possession rituals, where the spirits of the dead are summoned and allowed to enter the bodies of the living. In addition, there are many activities involving spiritual purification and various forms of prayer. Although Nadieli's family were Catholic believers, the situation was so desperate that they went there as a last hope. The mediums at the center recommended one well-known ritual. They claimed that bathing in the Julian River at midnight could wash away any evil spirits or curses attached to a person. The center was located in Yaracuy State, in a place known as the Mountain of Destiny. After entering the center, Nadieli had to go into the river every night to wash away the curse. Her entire family prayed desperately for the evil spirit to leave her. Despite all of this, none of it helped Nadieli. On Saturday, January 11th, 2020, Nadieli ultimately passed away. Just 3 weeks earlier, she had been a healthy daughter with nothing wrong with her at all. Soon after, Venezuela's criminal investigation authorities and health officials intervened. Nadieli's death certificate recorded the cause of death as cardiac arrest due to pneumonia and malnutrition. For reference, after this incident, the center was shut down. There was no formal indictment or decision not to indict. Nadieli's family felt abandoned by both doctors and religion. Nowhere were they able to receive a clear explanation of what had happened. And in the end, they lost their beloved daughter. The family quietly began preparing for the funeral. Then, someone came to the house. It was Stephanie. When Stephanie showed up, the parents were truly shocked. Nadieli had died only 1 day earlier, and they had not yet informed many people around them of the news. Stephanie said she had heard what happened and that it was a terrible tragedy, expressing her sorrow. She genuinely appeared devastated. Because Stephanie had already moved to another area, it was puzzling how she had learned about Nadieli's death so quickly. However, the family did not have the emotional capacity to dwell on that at the time. The mother told Stephanie that if she wanted to say her final goodbye, she should come to the funeral, and that they would appreciate it. Stephanie nodded and said she would. Around that time, Stephanie had posted several messages on Facebook, and their content was somewhat unsettling. In a post uploaded a few days before Nadieli's death, she wrote that she laughed at the living and walked with the dead, saying that the dead never disappointed her or lied to her. She also frequently posted other messages that seemed like cryptic codes. The family could not shake their uneasy feelings towards Stephanie. After Stephanie placed the bracelet on Nadieli's wrist, Nadieli began to fall ill, and the Stephanie who used to visit every day never came to see her even once after that. She did not send messages or make phone calls. Then, immediately after Nadieli died, she somehow knew and suddenly appeared at the house. Why would a 20-year-old adult want to be friends with a 15-year-old girl? The two became close very suddenly, and after giving her the bracelet, Stephanie disappeared just as abruptly. Everything felt strange. The family tried to steady themselves and focus on the funeral. On the day of the funeral, relatives, friends, and neighbors gathered. It was the day Nadieli was laid to rest. The parents told close acquaintances about Stephanie's suspicious behavior, saying that something about her had felt off. The people in the neighborhood were deeply religious and highly sensitive to superstition, so these stories stirred strong emotions among them. Everyone wondered whether Stephanie would show up and waited anxiously. Then, Stephanie appeared at the funeral. 7 or 8 people who already suspected her immediately went up to Stephanie and began interrogating her aggressively. One of them recorded the scene. The funeral quickly descended into chaos. People shouted, asking what she had done to their daughter, accusing her of knowing Nadielli would get sick and claiming that was why she had stayed away. Others shouted about Stephanie's Facebook posts and demanded to know why she had left the neighborhood. Stephanie was flustered and unable to respond properly. At first, Stephanie said, "I really have nothing to do with this. I did not even know something like this was happening." However, unable to withstand the pressure from so many people, she eventually began to make a kind of confession. What she revealed shocked everyone. Stephanie had not become friends with Narielli because she liked her. She had approached Narielli deliberately, and the reason was astonishingly simple. It was because of a boy. Setting aside black magic and all of that, the motive was actually very realistic. Going back a little, in early 2019, before Narielli met Stephanie, Narielli had casually seen a boy. It was not a serious relationship, more like something light and informal. But that boy later dated Stephanie while also seeing Narielli. Stephanie eventually found out about this, and she became furious. She could not control her emotions and decided that she needed to get rid of that girl. She then chose to actually put into practice the black magic associated with the religion she believed in. She truly did cast a curse. To perform the spell, she needed Narielli's DNA. That was why she rented a place near Narielli's home for exactly 1 month and tried hard to get close to her. Becoming close to Narielli was not difficult. She spoke to her whenever they ran into each other, and Narielli quickly opened her heart. Every time Stephanie went to Narielli's house, she began stealing items that contained her DNA, such as strands of hair and handkerchiefs. She placed each item into a glass jar and sealed them. After she had collected enough of these items, she went alone to a public cemetery at night. To avoid being seen, she found a secluded grave and buried the items she had collected beside it. There is a belief that if someone's personal belongings are buried next to a corpse, that person's fate becomes bound to the dead. That was why she buried Narielli's belongings beside a body. It was an act meant to exchange life and death. People who do not believe in superstition might hear this and think, could that really have made Narielli sick? But that was not the end of it. This alone was not the cause of Narielli's illness. When Stephanie went to the cemetery, she also brought several empty glass jars. The reason was to collect pieces of human bones. Night after night, she returned to the cemetery, digging up real graves and taking small bone fragments from decomposing bodies, placing them into the jars. Going alone to dig up graves was horrifying enough, but what she did next was even more disturbing. She dried the bone fragments, crushed them into a fine powder, and carried it with her. Each time she met Narielli, she mixed small amounts of the powder into her food. Over the course of 1 or 2 months, Narielli unknowingly consumed small amounts of human bone powder every day. In reality, ingesting human bone can cause neurological degeneration, infections, and heavy metal poisoning. If someone were to die slowly from a rare infection or a prion disease, it would be extremely difficult to detect through standard medical tests. Narielli's health was slowly collapsing day by day. After Stephanie made this confession, Narielli's parents told her to go to the police station and confess to everything without leaving anything out. Stephanie's actions went beyond simple superstition. They were acts that had been deliberately planned and carried out according to her own intentions. Fortunately, Stephanie showed a very cooperative attitude at the police station. Just as she had told people, she confessed to all of her crimes and even led the police to the cemetery she had dug up, telling them that this was where she had stolen the bones. However, the truly shocking fact was that despite all of these confessions, Stephanie was released without any punishment. This was because Venezuela had no laws that criminalized acts of witchcraft or religious rituals. In addition, hospital examinations did not reveal evidence of a fatal disease or bacterial infection, so there were no legal grounds to punish her. This fact quickly spread through the town and surrounding areas via social media. As people focused heavily on the sensational aspects of the case, countless baseless theories and conspiracy theories began to circulate. Some people claimed that Stephanie was a real witch who used black magic to kill Narieli. Considering that Narieli began to deteriorate rapidly after wearing the bracelet Stephanie gave her, it was not entirely surprising that people thought this way. Others argued that the bones of the dead slowly killed Narieli, claiming she had been infected with deadly bacteria. They said that such illnesses are difficult to detect through standard tests, and the diseases most frequently mentioned were Kuru disease and rabies. Still others claimed that the real reason for Narieli's death lay with the strange spiritual center. They argued that the purification rituals and treatment she received there worsened her condition and ultimately led to her death. In reality, since she had been unable to eat properly for weeks and was suffering from pneumonia, entering a cold river every night would indeed have been fatal. Narieli's parents, Jose and Andre, later made a public statement. They said that her condition worsened dramatically immediately after she received the bracelet from Stephanie. They also stated that Stephanie had performed a ritual offering Narieli's personal belongings to the dead, lending weight to the black magic theory. To this day, the exact truth of this case has never been revealed, and no one has been held legally responsible. Perhaps because of that, numerous conspiracy theories and hypotheses continue to surround the incident. From this point on, it may be worth examining each of these possibilities one by one and considering which explanation feels the most plausible. Narieli's death does not seem to have been caused by a single factor, but rather appears to be connected to a complex combination of issues present at the time. There was also the issue of Venezuela's collapsed healthcare system. Hospitals were experiencing shortages of more than 70% of basic medical supplies, including essential medicines, disinfectants, syringes, IV fluids, and hand sanitizers. Due to the government's economic crisis, about 40% of medical personnel, such as doctors and nurses, had left the country, leading to a severe shortage of healthcare workers. Unsanitary conditions and endless waiting lines created an extremely dangerous medical environment, especially for people with weak immune systems or existing illnesses. During this period, many patients in Venezuela were left untreated at home and eventually died because they could not receive proper medical care. These patients often did not have enough money and could not get immediate treatment, leaving them with no choice but to rely on religion. Narieli's parents also received very little help from hospitals, which forced them to look for other alternatives. There is another important detail. Narieli fainted in 2020, but she had reportedly fainted once several years earlier as well. Blood tests had shown a deficiency in neutrophils, a type of white blood cell, which meant she was extremely vulnerable to viruses and bacteria. This helps explain why her condition deteriorated so rapidly. Her immune system was almost non-existent. Another theory suggests that Narieli developed Kuru disease after consuming human bones for several months. Kuru is a progressive neurodegenerative disease that causes rapid physical and mental decline. Narieli exhibited symptoms similar to Kuru, including cognitive decline, tremors, fainting, and other neurological signs. Because this theory has been discussed so frequently, it is worth explaining Kuru disease in more detail. Kuru was first discovered and officially documented by a physician in 1955. It was observed among indigenous tribes living in New Guinea, where a strange neurological illness began to appear. Researchers studied these tribes and discovered that they practice cannibalism. Further investigation revealed that the disease was caused by consuming human brains. These indigenous people ate brains as part of religious rituals, which led to infection and the onset of the disease. Some people believe that Narieli developed Kuru disease by ingesting human bones. However, Narieli did not consume human brains. Still, since she did consume human bones, there may be some connection. Unfortunately, this information only became known after Narieli's death. If it had been discovered earlier, more extensive testing and observation might have been possible. To this day, there is no clearly identified medical diagnosis or definitive medical conclusion. There is one more factor to consider. Narieli began feeling ill in the winter of 2019. She collapsed in early 2020, and from that point on, her breathing difficulties and pneumonia symptoms worsened. This period coincided with the time when coronavirus was beginning to emerge and spread worldwide. At the time, Narieli's immune system was already severely weakened. If she had contracted coronavirus, her condition could have deteriorated rapidly. On top of that, as the hospital system began to collapse, thousands and even tens of thousands of people flooded into hospitals. During that period, proper testing and examinations were not carried out, so at first it was impossible to clearly determine whether symptoms like breathing difficulties or severe pain were caused by coronavirus or something else. In other words, nothing was ever confirmed with certainty. But all of these factors likely combined: the continuous consumption of human bones over several months, a possible viral infection layered on top of that, fainting episodes that had continued for years, a severely compromised immune system, coronavirus, malnutrition, and misguided treatments. Taken together, these factors likely led to Narieli's death. Does Stephanie bear full responsibility for Narieli's death? Was this truly the result of a curse or evil spirits? Even if Stephanie was not directly responsible for the immediate cause of death, she undeniably planned and carried out actions intended to kill Narieli. She rented a place next door, forced a friendship, went to cemeteries at night, dug up graves, and desecrated corpses. I cannot understand how all of this resulted in no punishment whatsoever. I am genuinely curious what you think about this case. That is all I have prepared for today's story. Thank you so much for watching until the end. I will return with another story next time. Until then, please stay safe.